Greenland has a long, complex, and deeply rooted history that begins long before it appeared on European maps or entered written records. Long before the island was noticed by outsiders, it was already home to human communities. Around 2500 BCE, the first people arrived in Greenland, traveling across the Arctic regions of North America. These early cultures, today known as the Sakak and later the Dorset cultures, laid the foundation for a continuous indigenous presence. From around 1000 CE, the Thiel culture emerged, from which today's Inuit are descended. These societies developed highly specialized ways of life, perfectly adapted to the extreme climatic conditions. Hunting, fishing, and extensive knowledge of ice, weather, animal migration patterns, and seasonal cycles were central to their survival. Technological innovations such as kayaks, dog sleds, and sophisticated hunting tools reflected a close relationship between humans, nature, and the environment. Greenland was therefore never an empty, historyless land, but for millennia a culturally rich and inhabited region. In the 10th century CE, Greenland entered the European sphere of awareness. Norse settlers from Iceland, led by Eric the Red, reached the southern coasts of the island and established several agricultural settlements. These communities practiced livestock farming, small-scale agriculture and trade, and maintained maritime connections with Iceland, Norway, and other parts of Europe. For several centuries, these Norse settlements existed alongside Inuit societies, though with very different lifestyles and environmental adaptations. While the Inuit continued to adapt flexibly to climatic changes, the Norse settlers remained more closely tied to European economic and social models. By the 14th century, the climate worsened significantly. The period known as the Little Ice Age, increasing isolation, economic decline, and possibly social tensions, eventually led to the complete disappearance of the Norse settlements by the 15th century. The Inuit, however, persisted and maintained their cultural continuity. The 18th century marked the beginning of a new era in Greenland's history, dominated by colonial rule. In 1721, Denmark officially claimed the island. Missionary activities, trade, and administrative control profoundly altered Inuit social structures. Christian missionaries intervened deeply in religious practices, while economic dependencies emerged that gradually displaced traditional ways of life. Greenland was treated as a colony, administered without meaningful political participation by the local population. Language, cultural practices, and social organization were marginalized or actively suppressed. This colonial period left not only material changes, but also profound psychological and social ruptures that continue to influence Greenland today. After the Second World War, a gradual but significant transformation began. In 1953, Greenland was formally integrated into the Danish state, ending its colonial status officially, though political and economic dependence persisted. The introduction of Home Rule in 1979 granted Greenland substantial authority over internal affairs for the first time. This autonomy was further expanded in 2009. Since then, Greenland has had its own government, parliament, and extensive control over resources, education, culture, and social policy. The Greenlandic language, Kalaallisut, has been strengthened as a central pillar of identity and officially recognized. Today, Greenland stands at a historical crossroads. On one hand, the island remains economically closely tied to Denmark. On the other, political and cultural self-awareness continues to grow. Climate change, which is accelerating the melting of the ice sheet, presents both new challenges and opportunities. Resources, new shipping routes, and geopolitical interests increasingly place Greenland in the global spotlight. At the same time, questions arise about how economic development can coexist with environmental protection and the preservation of indigenous ways of life. Greenland's history, therefore, is not merely a sequence of discoveries, changes in governance, and political reforms. It is primarily the story of an indigenous people who have preserved their identity over millennia despite colonization, cultural disruptions, and external influences. It tells of adaptation and resilience, of loss and renewal, and of the ongoing pursuit of self-determination, dignity, and a future shaped by their own hands in a rapidly changing world.